Introduction to StyleCAD version 12. I'm so glad that you've made it back, and I hope in module 1 that you learnt how to navigate the system. StyleCAD is one of my favourite programs to use, and I hope once you've learnt all the tools, it'll be your favourite one as well. Within pattern making, we have 3 pattern making principles within flat pattern making. We have dart manipulation, adding fullness, and contouring. Once you know these 3 basic flat pattern making principles, you should be able to digitally pattern make any style you desire. And my recommendation is that you always learn flat pattern making before you jump onto a computer and do digital pattern making. In this video today, I'm going to show you some basic skills such as cutting and joining patterns back together. We're going to have a look at grain lines, renaming, drawing with the Bezier Polyline tool. These features are your bread and butter features. These help you produce pattern making principles in future videos. So let's get right into it. On our left hand side, you'll see that we've got our toolbar. And the one I'm going to introduce you to today is the graphics toolbar. So select this tool. On the graphics toolbar, we have a rectangle, circle, polyline Bezier tool. We have a trace tool, and we have parallel internal line tool. The first 3 are pretty basic in the sense that we can create pattern shapes. The trace tool here is where we trace patterns off. So when you're thinking about flat pattern making physically, you generally have a master pattern or a block, and this is where you draw over the top of the block to make a particular style. And then you would trace off either an intermediate pattern or a final pattern. And this trace tool enables us to take off patterns, which is something that I'm going to show to you in this video. But before we do that, I'm going to introduce you to the Bezier Polyline tool. And this enables us to draw lines within the program. It's just like using a pencil. So select this tool, and we're going to have a go at drawing some random shapes. So it's just like Adobe Illustrator in the sense that we have an anchor point and a line segment. So if I click once on my left button and let go, you'll see that I have added one anchor point and I've got a line that I can draw in any direction. If I click once again, I'll add another anchor point, and you'll see that now we've got a line segment here, and I can continue to keep adding points to create a line. To finish the line, all I need to do is right click, and that will finish the line and create one long line segment with a few anchor points within the line. If I wanted to select one line segment in the drawing I've done, I could simply press Escape or Spacebar to get back to my line segment selector tool, and I could select some of these lines. I can also select and move some of these lines. So I could move these lines around to adjust the overall line segment. Sometimes it helps to zoom in a little bit. The other tool that's helpful when adjusting line segments is our point toolbar. So once again, if I zoom in and I go to my left hand side, I've got my point toolbar here. I could select my point selector, which I can then select my points and move the points around. So I can click and hold to move points around. Using my point selector tool, I can also right click on a point and select properties, and I can make it a smooth point. So if I click on the smooth point here and exit out, now this is a smooth point, and if I move this around, it will curve the line segment, which is great for armholes, necklines, rounding off, fullness, etc. So once again, you can right click and click properties, and then you can click smooth point. Or you can also hold in Control and Alt and click once. So if I hold in Control and Alt, click once, it will turn that into a smooth point. Let me zoom out. In order to delete any of these particular line segments and anchor points, I can grab my line segment tool, and I can simply select over all the lines and press delete. and those lines will go away. So let's have a look at our patterns here. As you can see, I have got a dress here, and it has a dart in the dress, which isn't drawn yet, and I want to draw the dart in. So I'm going to move my grain line because it's in the way. So I'm just going to click and hold, and whenever you click Shift in this program, that will make sure that it moves straight. So I'm going to move this out of the way so I can draw in my dart. Now, there are a couple of different ways we can draw in darts, and we could use the dart menu, but for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to use it using my Bezier Polyline tool. So I'm going to select the pencil tool, I'm going to select on my drill hole once, and I'm going to come down, and I'm going to draw in my diamond dart here. Remembering when I want to finish a line, I'm right clicking and I've got a dart in there. Now, let's say I wanted to create a princess seam dress. Unfortunately, I forgot to put in the drill holes on the front of the dress for my diamond dart. So let's just do it on the back, for example. So let's go from the end of this dart point here. I'm going to draw one there, and I'm going to draw a line that goes all the way. I can hold in Shift to make it goes all the way down. Now we also have another dart up here. For the purpose of this video, again, I'm just going to draw using my tool, like so. As you can see, we've got our lines in. So let's say we wanted to create this princess seam dress. Apologies that it's on the back, but anyways. To trace off this pattern, I could, on my graphics toolbar, grab the trace tool. And what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll start to trace around the pattern piece that I want to take off. So I'm going to click and drag over here, and you can see the line turns pink. And I'm going to come to this line, I'm going to select over this line, this one, this middle line. And for the purpose of this video, we'll just do this here. Once I've got all pink lines, so you can see I've gone all pink lines around this area, all I need to do is right click just once, and then I can trace off that pattern piece. So now I've got one pattern piece there. So essentially, for any pattern makers out there, we've done the alterations on our master pattern here, and we've copied off. In this instance, we don't need an intermediate pattern, so we've just traced off a final pattern piece. Let's, for good practice, just do the other side. So again, I could come in, I could trace down this side, the neckline, this side of the dart, and the bottom, and I can right click and control and drag, and there we go. We've got a very kind of basic princess line in the back. Not that we would normally do that, but anyways. And obviously at the moment we've got some sharp corners here. If we wanted to curve these, I could grab my point toolbar, I could right click on the point, and I could make that a smooth one. So we could go smooth to kind of smooth that point off ever so slightly. Same for these points here. We could go smooth and smooth. So we've got a nice line being sewn throughout that seam. Now we've got final pattern pieces here. And I wasn't going to introduce you to the seam tool, but I think it's good timely that we could introduce the seam toolbar here. So I'm going to close off all my toolbars, and again on my left hand side I'm going to grab the seam toolbar, which is this one here, and I can click once to open it, and it will come out as an external one. And just a note, I've been taking my toolbars in and out from the left hand side, but some people like to add their toolbars to the top. So I can add my toolbar up the top here. So say if I wanted all my toolbars open, I could just simply add them to the top here so I don't have to keep opening and shutting them. Or you can also put them down here on this side. So everything's very customizable. You could have a double toolbar here. I've been dragging them out because it makes it a little bit easier for you to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to introduce you to the seam toolbar now. So I can hold in Control and click and drag this pattern away. And just to remind you, if I hold in Control and click once, that basically selects the whole pattern. So you can see it's selected everything around. So here in the seam allowance toolbar, we have one for adding seam allowance, one for minusing seam allowance, and one for adjusting seam allowance. We also have a pattern walking tool, which I'll introduce you in a later video. So I'm going to grab my plus seam allowance tool. And there's a couple of different ways to add seam allowance to patterns. I can click on the line once and my seam size toolbar will come up, and I could select seam allowances from the left-hand toolbar. I could manually enter it. So if I manually enter it, I could put in, 1 centimeter here in Australia, and I could press OK. And you can see here that it adds in 1 centimeter seam allowance along that seam that I've collected. But we can also do this a faster way. So I can select the plus seam allowance, and on my keyboard, I can just put the number 1. And therefore, I can just click and drag around all the areas I want to add 1 seam allowance, which is pretty fast, pretty accurate. So you can see I've got 1 centimeter seam allowance all around my pattern pieces here. Now let's say I've made a mistake and my pattern making teacher actually said, hey, you need to put 5 centimeters on the hem, not 1 centimeter. I could come over and I could select my size, my seam edit tool, this one here. And I could simply click on the bottom of the pattern piece. And this time I'll go manual entry and press 5 centimeters and press OK. And therefore you can see that now it's added 5 centimeters. And if you're unsure, you could grab your measuring tape, like I taught you in module 1, click and drag, and we can see 5 centimeters. Fantastic. And if I go back in, I'm going to grab my size edit again, click on this one, manual entry, and 5 centimeters, and I'll press OK. Now to delete seam allowance, you could use your line segment tool. So I can press escape, and I can click and drag over my pattern piece and press delete, and you'll see that it'll delete all the pattern seam allowance. And generally when we're working in StyleCAD, depending on your pattern making preferences, I always pattern make with the seam allowance off. Now while we're in the seam toolbar, kind of impromptu learning here, I wasn't going to go through the seam toolbar, but while we're here we may as well do it. We can also pattern walk patterns. So let's just I'll add my 1 centimeter seam allowance all over again. And let's see, maybe I want to walk this pattern together to make sure that I'm proving it and making sure that the pattern pieces are going to fit together. So I can grab my pattern walking toolbar. So here you can see this is the pattern walking. I can select this tool. And what I'll do is holding in Shift, I'm going to select over the lines that I want to walk together. So I want to walk these 2 seams together like so. So holding in Shift, I've selected all my lines. And then the final thing to do is I need to click, hold, and drag the patterns together. So I'm going to click and drag. You can see that I'm holding on, it gives me a line. I'm going to drag it over here, and then the pattern pieces will go together. And with my wheel on my mouse, I can scroll and walk these patterns together to make sure that they're going to fit and I don't have any extra seam. And look at that, I must be a pretty good pattern maker because I don't have, I reckon we're right on, maybe 0.5 millimeters, if not even more. Sorry, even littler. I think I've done a pretty good job there. So my patterns are proving. If I wanted to zoom in this area, I can hold in Alt, and this enables me to move around. as you can see, my seam allowance here is not proved very well. So I would have to go back in and possibly adjust that. So let's just say if my pattern pieces were out, so let's go down to the bottom here and let's say one pattern piece was out. The great thing about this is I can actually adjust it while I've got my pattern piece here. So let's say I'm going to adjust here and I go keep changes. Then you can see it will adjust my pattern. Also in that mode, I'll just enter in back again. You can also add notches. So for example, I have been naughty and I haven't added any notches in this sewing yet. So really I should add a notch here. So I can do this by selecting add notch. So I'm going to add a notch there. I'm going to add a notch in the middle, and I'm going to add a notch down the bottom here. I'll add another notch and I'll go keep changes. And then you can see I've added in some notches. So I've added one here, one here, one here. So when we sew and when we print off this pattern, we have some indicators to sew with. I can also change any point on my pattern to be notches. So for example, say if we wanted one, I don't know, let's say we wanted a random one here. I can actually grab my point toolbar. I can right click on the point, properties, and I can add a T notch and cancel. I can also on my keyboard type N1 for notch 1 and click once, and that'll add a notch, or N2 and that'll add another style of a notch, so a triangle notch, and so on. So the next tool I'm going to introduce you to is how to cut a pattern in half or at design lines. For example, we've got our front dress here, which is a whole dress block, but what happens if we just wanted to create a bodice and we wanted to cut it in half, or perhaps we wanted to add pleats to the bottom of this dress, so we would have to cut the pattern in half and square block out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my graphics toolbar here. I'm going to grab my Bezier Polyline tool. I'm going to draw a line where I want to cut the pattern in half. So I'm going to click once on the waistline. I'm going to hold shift so that my line is straight. I'm going to right click at the other side. And this time I'm going to grab my cutting toolbar. So over here on the left hand side, I've got my cut and join toolbar. And I've got a couple of different settings here. So the main two are these ones here. So this one pulls the pattern apart and this one puts them back together. So I am going to select the cut away, so the cut tool. And all I simply need to do is click on the line once. And then I can hold in Control and move the pattern away. So I've cut my pattern into two pieces. And StyleCAD does have a pleating function, but for the purpose of this video, let's just square block this out for some pleats. So I can grab my line segment tool, or I could press Escape. I could do the maths and say that we're going to square block out 50 centimeters, or let's use our measuring tool here and we can measure. Well, let's say we're going to add 100% fullness, so let's add another 21 centimeters. So I could grab my line segment tool. I'm going to select this line. I'm going to type 21 in my keyboard, and I'm going to click and drag holding shift, and it will automatically add 21 centimeters for us. So now we should have 42 centimeters overall. Perfect. So we've square blocked out. We can add our notches. And we could gather the skirt, and we've now got a gathered skirt, gathered dress, I should say, at the waistline. So that is one really easy, great function, but let's undo that. And I'm now going to show you how to put the pattern pieces back together. So this time I'm going to select my toolbar here with the arrows pointing towards each other. I'm going to select one line, hold Shift, select the next line, and click and drag these two patterns together and press OK. And then it'll join my pattern back together. I'm going to do that once more and zoom in for you. So again, I'm going to select over both, click, hold on and drag to the next point, and then I can press OK. And it will put the pattern pieces back together, which is fantastic. That's the way we want them. Perfect. So in this lesson, we had a look at how to cut patterns in half. We had a look at the seam toolbar. And in the next video, I will introduce you to some further tools looking at dart manipulation and adding fullness. Thanks for joining today's video.